Good morning. I'm Suzanne Scholte, president of the Defense Forum Foundation, and it's a great pleasure to welcome you to our forum, What to Do About North Korea. I just want to begin by acknowledging a few people that made this program possible. First of all, Jason West, who has done a tremendous amount of work for us to make sure we had a secure and safe platform to be able to broadcast this important program, but also Johnny Park and Hyun Lee, who did a lot of preparatory work in helping with translations. So for background information, the Defense Forum, the DFF's forums were founded in the 1980s to give congressional staff an opportunity to hear from expert speakers on critical topics in a bipartisan collegial atmosphere. We have an expert speaker to address the critical topic of North Korea and a bipartisan audience of congressional staff, NGO leaders, and others interested in North Korea. And I also want to recognize Laura Crouch and Annie Kowalowski from the Senate Foreign Relations Committee for helping to reach out to staffers that were very interested in the North Korea topic. Now, in order to make this session as informative and interesting as possible, I'm going to ask our speaker a series of questions, and his answers will be simultaneously translated to English for our audience. Then we're going to open the discussion for any questions the audience may have, and the priority will go to the congressional staff first and then to the rest of the audience. Our speaker today is considered the highest ranking defector from North Korea since Hwang Jong-yap's defection back in 1997. For nearly 30 years, Jong Ho faithfully served the Kim family in North Korea, advising on economic development and making billions for the regime through his work in Bureau 39, and is the founder and president of Daehung Shipping Trading Company. His efforts led to his receiving numerous awards, including Hero of Labor Award, which is the highest civilian honor in North Korea. But much like Hwang Jong-yap, something happened that made him and his family completely turn against the Kim regime and make the decision to put their own lives at risk in an extreme danger to flee their homeland. Mr. Ri, thank you for the honor of giving us the honor of hosting you today. My first question is to describe for us about your life and why you are considered the highest ranking North Korean defector.
Hello everyone, my name is Jong Ho. I would like to thank the President of Defense Forum Foundation, Suzanne Scholte, for having me in this special occasion and all of you for attending. I worked for about 30 years in a central institution directly under the Workers' Party of North Korea since mid-1980s. During my service, I was the founder and president of the Daehung Shipping and Trading Company in Office 39 of the Workers' Party from 1993. And in 1998, under the direct appointment of Kim Jong Eun, Kim Jong Eun's father, I served as the CEO, Deputy Secretary level of the Daehung General Bureau, which manages several trading companies and departments. In addition, in 2007, I was directly appointed by Kim Jong Il to serve as the chairman of the Korea Kim Jong Economic Development General Group of the North Korea National Defense Commission. Before asylum, I was working as the head of the Daehung General Company of Office 39 in Dalian, China, and I escaped with my family in October 2014. In 2002, I was also awarded Hero of Labor, the highest civilian honor of North Korea.
I understand that you and your family literally voted to make the decision to flee North Korea. What caused you to turn against the Kim regime and put your own lives in extreme danger?
제가 이제 2014년 망명을 결심하게 된 것은
In October 2014, I decided to seek asylum because I was terribly shocked to see Kim Jong Un brutally execute his uncle, Jang Sung-taek, hundreds of senior officials and his aides, and imprison tens of thousands of their family members into political prison camps. Especially a month before Jang's arrest, I met him to discuss my plan to build a cold chemical industrial complex in North Korea very positively. So I was even more shocked. At that time, a number of my colleagues and acquaintances were horribly executed with the anti-craft machine guns, and my children's friends were also taken to the notorious political prison camps. Many people were executed throughout the year, and day after day, the terrible news of the executions has spread. Literally, all North Korean officials and residents were in panic with fear. As I hear the news of bloody brutality that happens every day, fear and anger crossed, and I started thinking that the next target could be me and my family. I could no longer see any hope in North Korea, and I was determined to do something for the freedom and human rights of North Koreans. Although it was a dangerous path that could lead to the loss of our lives, my family and I sought asylum in search for freedom with a great hope for liberation of North Korea.
I believe no one understands more the impact of sanctions on North Korea than you, as you spent much of your career making sure North Korea could evade them. So you're the best person to answer this very timely question. The regime in North Korea has been repeatedly sanctioned over many decades for its nuclear program and more recently for its crimes against humanity. And even the United States Congress in 2014 overwhelmingly voted in support of sanctions against the North Korea regime. But the Kim regime is still developing nuclear weapons and is still in power. Are sanctions really the way to go, or should we take another approach?
강력한 대북 제재는 북한의 비핵화를 완성하고 인권 문제를 해결하기 위한 가장 효율적인 압박
Strong sanctions against North Korea are the most effective means of pressuring the Kim regime to complete its denuclearization and resolve its human rights issues. The UN sanctions adopted in 2017 are enormously powerful sanctions that have completely blocked North Korea's export and import markets, such as natural resource export, textile export, marine product export, labor export, and its oil import market. It is an unprecedented sanction in the history of North Korea and has been a fatal blow to the North Korean leadership. According to the recent China's customs statistics data, North Korea's exports fell sharply to 112 in 2019 compared to 2016 and worsened in 2020, down to 165. As such, a lot of North Korea's funding lines were blocked. According to the recent source from North Korea, 3 years of sanctions against North Korea have made the North Korean economy worse than in the 1990s. Despite the apparent effect of sanctions on North Korea, some people who are not familiar with the situation in the North have questioned the effectiveness of sanctions and have made absurd claims that the next administration should engage in dialogue in a simultaneous action manner. In the past, the United States has failed to denuclearize, repeating a vicious cycle of dialogue, compensation, sanctions, and simultaneous actions with the North Korean regime for decades. For example, in October 2008, the United States removed North Korea from the state sponsor of terrorism in exchange for the shutdown of the cooling tower of the Yongbyon reactor. However, in May 2009, North Korea carried out its second nuclear test in 6 months, and in 2013, it explicitly announced that it would restore the Yongbyon reactor to its original state and produce nuclear material. In addition, after the U.S.-North Korean agreement on denuclearization in Geneva, Switzerland in 1994, North Korea secretly developed nuclear weapons while receiving aid for the construction of light water reactors and heavy oil, but in 2002, it openly admitted. As you can see, North Korea has consistently developed nuclear weapons over the past decades, deceiving the United States. However, the US policy toward North Korea has been changed with each new administration. Therefore, I hope the next administration will continue to maintain its policy of upgrading and strengthening sanctions against North Korea until the Kim regime completes its denuclearization. If we continue to tighten sanctions against North Korea, Kim Jong Eun will eventually choose either to collapse like the Soviet Union with nuclear weapons or to denuclearize. If I were to advise you to strengthen sanctions against North Korea based on my experience in North Korea, first of all, the US needs to focus on blocking the markets of China and Russia, which provide North Korean import and export markets and labor markets. That's because with North Korea's import and export markets and labor markets are blocked, money lines will be cut off and the lifeline of crude oil supply will be cut off. Thus, secondary sanctions that block the markets are 100 times more effective than sanctioning North Koreans. And some people are quick to conclude that sanctions are ineffective because North Korea earns money from smuggling at sea and at its borders. However, such smuggling could not provide enough funds to maintain the regime. Currently, tens of thousands of North Korean workers and about 5,000 IT professionals are said to be operating in China's border cities, including Dandong, China. Hence, the United States should take strict measures to impose secondary sanctions on Chinese companies that provide North Korea's labor market and IT program outsourcing, and cooperate with North Korean hackers to extort funds from the international financial network. It is estimated that thousands of North Korean IT professionals and hackers are making illegally about $1 billion a year. In addition, in order to complete denuclearization by strengthening sanctions against North Korea, it is necessary to completely block the North Korean rubber goods import market. The tire rubber used in North Korean military vehicles is 100% imported. Therefore, banning North Korea's imports of rubber products could cause all military vehicles, including missile vehicles, to stop and have a tremendous effect on denuclearization. I would like the US Congress to adopt a new law to strengthen sanctions against North Korea for its denuclearization.
Well, first of all, I want to explain that our translator wants to be sure to get every single word that Mr. Rhee, our expert speaker, is saying, and it takes a little bit longer than his speaking portion. So I apologize for the delay, but I want to get to the next question. As we all well know, the Korean War ended in 1953 with a ceasefire. There is now much talk today that it's time to sign an end of war declaration. It seems innocent enough, but others warn if such a document is signed, it would spell the end of the Republic of Korea. What is your view on this current topic, Mr. Rhee?
최근 한반도에는 정전선언 이슈가 이제 크게 부각되고 있습니다. 한국의 문재인 대통령은
Recently, the issue of declaration to end the Korean War has been highlighted on the Korean Peninsula. In a speech at the UN General Assembly in 2020, South Korean President Moon Jae-in said, "The end of war declaration will open the way to a permanent peace system along with the denuclearization of North Korea." However, the policy that I was instructed when I was inside the regime about the end of war declaration is a completely different concept from what the South Korean government calls the end of war declaration. The North Korean regime is attempting to withdraw US troops and all of its strategic assets from South Korea by making the US military lose its presence in South Korea through the end of war declaration. In short, the end of war declaration pursued by the North Korean regime embodies the ambition to drive out the US troops from the south and unify the Korean peninsula by force. On the other hand, the end of war declaration pursued by the Moon government is aimed at institutionalizing peaceful coexistence, maintaining the two incompatible inner Korean systems on the Korean peninsula. So, President Moon's vision for the end of war declaration could be an anti-unification policy that divides the two Koreas permanently into liberal democracy and socialism, and institutionalize the division. Many people are raising their voices that the Korean peninsula should be unified under a liberal democratic system like Germany. The historical experience tells us that the communist regime in North Korea and the free democratic state in the South cannot be compatible. The Korean peninsula has suffered the 3 years of the destructive war. The two Koreas fought extreme ideological confrontation for 75 years in the peninsula, and the Korean peninsula has been in sharp conflict over a truce for 67 years. Thus, it is ideal for all 80 million Korean people living in the north, in the south, or even overseas, are reunited and live happily under a freer and more prosperous system. The North Korean regime has not opened its country for 75 years, and one family has continued to run the dictatorship for 3 generations. However, the Moon Jae-in administration is helping the dictator's long-term power by advocating so-called peaceful coexistence with the communist dictator. This is hateful for the 25 million North Koreans who long for liberation from the restraint of freedom. And it is also a surprise for the South Koreans who are threatened with North Korea's nuclear weapons. Recently, Secretary of State Pompeo presented the U.S. principled position that the denuclearization of North Korea should precede the declaration of an end to the war on the Korean peninsula. It should be noted that if the end of war declaration is made without the North Korea's denuclearization, both physical economic sanctions and military pressure against the Kim regime will be thwarted. So I hope President Moon's insistence on the end of war declaration is not intended to extend the Kim family's rule and save the communist dictator from the crisis of economic sanctions against North Korea and ROK-US joint military exercise. That's because many people have reasonable doubts. If President Moon's declaration of the end of the war benefits the enemy, it will certainly be a treason against South Korea. President Moon's agreement at the Inner Korean Summit on April 27, 2018, to declare an end to the war in that year and to transform the armistice into a peace treaty to establish a permanent and solid peace regime was the acceptance of the Kim regime's demands. This is exactly what I had learned for decades in the North Korean regime. I believe the end of war declaration should not be a declaration that only meets the Kim regime's demands. I served in the North Korean military in the Eastern Military Demarcation Line of North Korea for 9 years. So, the first thing that comes to my mind when I heard the end of war declaration is that elimination of the barbed wires of the DMZ, the millions of landmines and machine guns aimed at the southern guard posts. For this reason, I believe if the end-of-war declaration were signed, the vision should be presented how and what will be different from the current state of armistice. We need to remove the symbol of Korean War, such as the barbed wire, millions of landmines, and military installations installed in the DMZ, and turn the area into an international peace zone, making the DMZ irreversible status. In addition, an institutional system must be established so that the residents of the North and the South can freely come and go and interact with one another. Only then the declaration of the end of the war will be truly meaningful and the start of reunification process will commence. However, from the standpoint of the North Korean dictator, who is implementing a policy of isolation for fear of collapse of his regime, he will not accept the vision of the end of war declaration in which opens the DMZ to make it an international peace zone and North Koreans and South Koreans could interact with one another freely. If the US Congress makes an end of war declaration law, I hope that the DMZ area, a symbol of the current armistice, will be opened up to become an international peace zone and allow both North Koreans and South Koreans to interact freely.
Well, as many of you know, my big focus with North Korea has always been on human rights, but unfortunately, the policies the main focus has always been in policy, has been on the nuclear weapons program that North Korea has. And so the big question is, will Kim Jong Il ever give up his nuclear weapons? Please explain, Mr. Ri, how that could be accomplished.
내가 이제 북한 정권에 있을 때 김정은은 2013년 노동당 전원회에서 조선의 핵무기는 결코 미국 달러와 바꾸려는 상품이 아니고 협상의 탁자 위에 올려놓고 흥정하는 대상이나 경제 고려의 대상이 아니라고 자기 입장을 확고히 밝힌 적이 있습니다.
When I was an official in North Korea, Kim Jong Eun made a clear statement in a 2013 plenary session of the Korean Workers' Party. DPRK's nuclear weapons are never a commodity to be exchanged for US dollars. It is not a bargaining chip nor economic deal that can be discussed on the negotiation table. In addition, he firmly said, as long as the United States remains on the planet and a nuclear threat exists, we can never give up our nuclear weapons, and made the Constitution specify that North Korea is a nuclear nation. The Kim regime is always afraid of being attacked by South Korea, and it believes that it will lose its superiority over South Korea without nuclear weapons, under the Cold War-style ideological confrontation between the two Koreas. In fact, North Korea's nuclear weapons are only necessary for Kim Jong Eun. He regards nuclear weapons as a last resort to protect his power and regime survivability, and as a strategic weapon to unify South Korea. So he has never made a decision on denuclearization, and he has never considered of it. Since I am well aware of the nature of the North Korean system, I think it is important to achieve the denuclearization of North Korea through dialogue as long as Kim Jong-un exists. The United States should realize that the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, signed by Kim Jong-un at the U.S.-North Korea summit in Singapore, is his strategy. Since the U.S.-North Korea summit in Singapore, he has not abandoned a single nuclear weapon or a kilogram of nuclear material and has been further augmenting nuclear weapons. For the past 26 years, the United States has talked with North Korea, provided funding, and imposed tough sanctions for denuclearization, but they have not stopped nuclear development. North Korea now has more nuclear weapons than ever before. For this reason, I think it is absolutely necessary to set up a strategy to complete the denuclearization of North Korea within a year or two without taking time. This is because the US President's term of office is only 4 years and Kim Jong Eun's term is unlimited, so time works in his favor. North Korea is not a normal state. North Korea is a communist dictatorship ruled by Kim Jong Eun with absolute power, and its nuclear weapons were created by the needs of Kim Jong Un and his family to maintain their survival and regime. Therefore, North Korea's nuclear program is only decided by Kim Jong Un, and without his instructions, North Korean diplomats cannot move a step further. Also, there is not a single person in North Korea who would recommend Kim Jong Un to give up his nuclear weapons program. So, if the US negotiate with the North Korean regime, it is more efficient to conduct top-down negotiations rather than traditional diplomatic methods. Additionally, the issue of human rights abuses and religious oppression must be put on the agenda in the denuclearization talks with North Korea. To denuclearize North Korea, the US should not be deceived by North Korea's appeasement policy and deception. In addition, the US should continue to tighten the lifeline of the North Korean regime while consistently strengthening the sanctions against North Korea. Furthermore, just as the US and Western countries have led to the collapse of the Soviet Union in the past, intelligence warfare, arms race, and economic pressure on North Korea should be carried out simultaneously and aggressively so that it cannot remain in power with nuclear weapons. The ultimate means of denuclearization of North Korea is a military option to selectively eliminate the nuclear-armed leadership. That's because Kim Jong Un targets the US mainland, including Washington, D.C., with nuclear weapons, and even Kim Jong Un devised a plan to launch a preemptive strike. Therefore, the US should not ignore the increasing capabilities of nuclear-tipped ICBMs and SLBMs, and should use all possible means and methods to eliminate the North Korean nuclear threat as soon as possible.
Okay. Mr. Ri, you are a living, breathing example of the fact that there are elites in the regime who come to a point that they end up opposing the dictatorship. But don't they either flee or get killed? You seem to think it's possible to bring about peaceful change in North Korea from within. Please explain why you believe that.
북한의 그 공산 독재 체제는 사이비 종교 집단과 같이 김정은을 신적인 존재로 우상하고 그에게 충성하도록 강요하는 개인 숭배 사상과 유일적 영도 체제 시스템 그리고 공포 통치 시스템에 의해서 작동되고 있습니다. 그래서 김정은은 절대 권력을 행사합니다.
The communist dictatorial system of North Korea is like a cult. It makes the people of North Korea to worship and obey him. It is facilitated by cult of personality, monolithic leading system, and reign of terror. And that is how Kim Jong Un enjoys his absolute authority. And the organization and guidance department and the propaganda and agitation department of North Korea oversee Kim Jong Un's power. Within the structure of his system, democracy and collective leadership do not exist. Therefore, slave-like North Korean elites are expendable and are nothing but a means of exercising Kim's power. In North Korea, Kim Jong Un rules over the people of North Korea throughout the Workers' Party of Korea, and the elites have been leading the rogue state with the burden of dictatorship. However, Kim Jong Eun does not hesitate to execute his political elites, framing them as traitors. Because of that reason, Kim Jong Eun does not have talented people around him. He believes he has a plethora of slave-like political elites around him, and does not appreciate the importance of having talented people around him. In the insular state like North Korea, it takes a lot of time and wherewithal to grow talented people. However, under Kim Jong Un's rule, he has brutally executed about 1,000 political elites and high-ranking military officers, and further, numerous people were sent to political prison camps. The heinous executions are still happening inside North Korea. Because of the aforementioned reasons, North Korean elites have always been living in fear and threats, and some have antipathy toward the dictator. However, because they know their third generations of families will be executed once they express their acrimony against the regime, they never reveal their grievance toward Kim Jong Un. There's no such a thing called absolute trust between Kim Jong Un and his political elites. Because of that reason, North Korean elites do not want to be around the vicious dictator. Also, because of the fear of execution, North Korean elites are ensnared in complacency and are not entirely dedicated to the regime. At the recent North Korean Workers' Party convention, Kim Jong Un expressed his discontent toward his elites for not working hard enough. In the totalitarian system of North Korea, even the dictator cannot do anything without the cooperation of slave-like North Korean elites. Further, they also worry about not only their own safety, but also the future of their children. They believe they lost their home and there is no bright future for North Korea. They have been struggling, seeking hope. North Korean political elites' attempts to defect, risking everything, including their own lives, are the signs of resistance against the Kim regime. Once, someone said, "Reign of terror won't last forever." Therefore, it is important for the world to assure North Korean political elites a better future and safety, and encourage them to open North Korea to the world and lead the hermit kingdom to democracy. I strongly believe that with the help from the outside, just like how Romanians purged their dictator Nicolae Ceausescu in 1989, and how East Germans rose up themselves for a change, North Korea can also change. So far, North Korea isolated themselves from the international community and unequivocally disregarded human rights, resorting to implicative system. Thus, I request U.S. Congress to enact legislations to open North Korea and rescind North Korean implicative system. To bring changes to North Korea, we need to open North Korea to the world first and abolish the implicative system of North Korea.
So what kinds of things should the United States specifically and the international community do in general to improve the lives of North Koreans?
저는 이제 북한의 변화를 촉진시키기 위해서 미국과 국제사회가 할 수 있는 일은 북한을 개방시키고 인권을 개선하도록 국제적 압력을 지속적으로 강화해야 된다고 이제 생각합니다. 동시에 폐쇄된 북한 내부에 외부 세계 진실된 정보들을 많이 들여보내서 북한 주민들과 엘리트들의 인식을 바꾸고 그들을
To bring changes in North Korea, the U.S. and the international community should focus on opening the rogue state to the world and ameliorating human rights violations inside North Korea. At the same time, it is crucial to send outside information into isolated North Korea so the people of North Korea, including North Korean elites, learn the truth. Furthermore, the international community can amplify the effectiveness of sending outside information into North Korea by supporting Free North Korea Radio and North Korean defectors who are enjoying freedom. This information warfare against North Korea will bring many positive outcomes.
So is the situation in North Korea? What's it like today? How widespread is the coronavirus? Is it true that they're imprisoning people with this flu rather than hospitalizing them?
최근 조선중앙통신의 보도에 의하면 김정은이 노동당 정치국 확대회에서 코로나 바이러스 전파의
According to the North Korea's central news agency, Kim Jong Eun also stressed the seriousness of the spread of the coronavirus during his recent meeting of the party's political bureau, ordering the departments to build a complete blockade and increase the level of emergency protection.
완벽한 방세 봉쇄 장벽을 이걸 계속 해야 되나 지금? 그러니까 완벽한 봉쇄 장벽을 구축하고 비상 방역전을 보다 강도 높게 벌리라고 지시했습니다. 그만큼 코로나 바이러스에 심각하게 반응한다는 것입니다. 그러나 이제 소식에 의하면 북한 당국의 코로나 바이러스 방역은 김정은의 안전을 지키는 데 기본 초점이 맞춰져 있습니다. 북한 정권은 외부의 적, 미국, 한국이 최고 존엄을 해치려고 바이러스를 퍼뜨리는 이런 책동을 한다고 이제 지시를 내리고 있습니다. 그래서 북한은 코로나 바이러스 방역을 비이성적으로 진행하고 있습니다.
However, according to the internal source, the North Korean authorities' coronavirus quarantine is focused on keeping Kim Jong Eun safe. The regime gave an instruction to its people that external enemies such as the United States and South Korea are plotting to spread the virus to harm the highest dignity. That's why the Kim regime is conducting quarantine measures abnormally against the virus.
지금 북한은 코로나 바이러스 방역 때문에 긴 국경 연선의 2km 구간을 완충지대로 만들고 국경 세관들을 모두 차단시켰으며 밀수 행위들을 엄격히 단속하고 있습니다. 또한 강과 바다도 봉쇄하는 조치를 취하고 평양시에 외부 사람들이 들어가지 못하게 차단하고 있습니다.
For the protection of coronavirus, North Korea has blocked all border customs and strictly cracked down on smuggling activities by creating a 2-kilometer buffer zone along the long border. In addition, measures are taken to block rivers and seas, and the outsiders are blocked from entering the city. They even brutally executed people for failing to keep the coronavirus quarantine order.
심지어 이제 코로나 방역 질서를 지키지 않았다고 사람들을 잔인하게 처형까지 하고 있습니다.
Oh, they even brutally executed people for failing to keep the coronavirus quarantine order.
북한 당국의 코로나 바이러스 방역은 최고 존엄, 그러니까 김정은의 안전과 결부시킴으로써 중국과 그리고 미국에서 코로나 바이러스 환자가 완전히 없어질 때까지 앞으로 계속 철저히 봉쇄할 것으로 예견됩니다.
The North Korean authorities could continue to block everything until the virus is completely eliminated in China, South Korea, and the United States by linking the coronavirus with the safety of the highest dignity, Kim Jong Eun.
So now we're going to open up to questions from our audience. And the first question I have is from a congressional staff member. Wants to know, is Kim Jong Eun alive and well? We're hearing all kinds of rumors of Kim doubles. And so what's the status of Kim Jong Il? Is he alive and well? The second question is about what is Kim Jong's role, his sister, and overall, do we really know, do we understand what's happening internally, or are things so close? So that's the first question Actually a series of questions about the Kim, his sister, and how much do we actually know what's happening internally?
첫 번째 질문입니다. 김정은이 현재 살아있나요? 북한에서 잘 지내고 있나요? 그리고 그와 관련해서 김여정의 역할은 무엇인가요? 그리고 마지막으로는 북한 외부에 있는 사람들이 정말로 북한 내부에서 어떤 일이 일어나고 있는지 정말 잘 알고 있다고 생각하시나요?
저는 김정은이 현재 건강 상태가 좋지 않지만 여전히 이제 건재하고 있고 그 통치력에는 문제가 없다고 제가 생각하고 있습니다.
I think that Kim Jong Eun is doing well, despite the fact that he's having some physical difficulties. He has no problem ruling over the people of North Korea at this moment.
그리고 이제 최근에 그 한국 뉴스에 보면은 이제 김정은이 이제 그 권력을 이양받았다 또는 권력을 이제 분담받았다고 얘기하는데 사실 북한의 유일 영도 체제에서는 그런 것이 존재하지 않습니다.
Well, according to South Korean media outlets, they talk about how Kim Jong-un distributed his power to Kim Yo-jong. But as a matter of fact, in North Korea, with systems like North Korea, it is impossible to distribute one's power to others.
김여정은 그 자기 맡은 직책이 노동당 조직부 일부 부장이기 때문에 그 조직 지도부가 이제 그 김정은의 통치 시스템을 관장하는 곳입니다. 그러니까 그게 모든 정책 결정에 직결돼서 그 자기 권한이 높아진 것뿐입니다.
So the position that Kim Yo-jong currently holds in North Korea, she is in charge of leading this North Korean leading system. With that being said, Kim Yo-jong, yes, got promoted within the system, but that does not mean that Kim Yo-jong enjoys equal amount of power compared to Kim Jong-un.
그리고 이제 그 북한 그 내부 이제 북한 내부가 지금 현재 그 시스템이 제대로 작동이 안 되고 있습니다. 제대로 작동이 안 된다는 것은 경제 상황이 아주 최악이기 때문에 그 독재자가 의도하는 대로 제대로 진척이 안 되고 사람들이 제대로 팔다리가 움직이지 않고 있는 것입니다.
In North Korea, their current system is dysfunctional, largely due to the fact that economic sanctions, their economy is suffering. Because of that, the dictator Kim Jong Eun hasn't been able to exercise his power and hasn't been able to dictate people.
Okay. So the next question I have, also from a congressional staff member, very important question, very timely, about China. And the question is, if China continues to undermine the sanctions by aiding and helping the Kim regime, what can be done about that? Basically, China's role with North Korea. If he could reflect on what they're doing now and what can be done about China's support for the Kim dictatorship.
두 번째 질문입니다. 아시겠지만 현재 국제사회가 미국을 포함한 국제사회가 북한의 경제 제재를 가하고 있습니다. 하지만 모두가 알다시피 중국이 북한의 그 경제 제재를 피하는 것을 도움을 주고 있는데요. 현재 그 중국이 그 세계 국제사회의 경제 제재에 관해서 북한에 어떤 도움을 주는지, 그리고 그것에 관해서 미국을 포함한 국제사회가 중국을 어떻게 할 수 있는지에 대한 답변을 부탁드립니다.
지금 중국은 이제 그 유엔 안보리에서 이제 그 채택된 이런 그 대북 제재 결의안들을 제대로 이행하지 않고 있습니다. 지금 미중 간에 이제 관계가 나빠지면서 이제 북한에 그 수만 명의 근로자들이 중국에 들어와서 노동하도록 허용하고 있고, 그리고 이제 제가 알건대도 지금 현재 중국 단동시를 비롯해서 이제 경강 도시들에 수만 명의 북한 근로자들이 1년 동안 일을 하고 있습니다.
As we all know, China has not abided by UN security resolutions against North Korea. And as we all know, because of the current conflict between United States and China, China has allowed North Korean workers, laborers, to come to China and work in their border cities.
그렇게 하고 지금 또 이제 그 북한의 IT 전문가들, 이 IT 전문가들이 수천 명이 나와서 약 5천 명이 나왔다고 하네요. 이제 그런 사람들이 나와서 그 IT 프로그램 아웃소싱하는 방법으로 돈을 벌어들이고 또 그중에 해커들은 이제 국제 금융망에서 자금을 탈취하는 방법으로 돈을 벌어들이는데 그 금액이 굉장히 많은 돈이라고 이제 하네요.
North Korea, the Kim regime, sent IT experts, about 5,000 IT experts to China. And what they do is through IT outsourcing and illicit global financial network, they have been able to garner money, wherewithal, resources for the Kim regime.
그 외에도 지금 북한의 그 폭탄이라든지 이제 북한의 뭐 다른 그 북한 밀주 행위들도 이제 그 중국이 많이 돕고 있습니다. 그러니까 중국은 유엔 그 안보리 성원국으로서 자기 책임과 의무를 다하지 않고 있습니다.
So the point being is China obviously has not been a faithful member to the UN Security Council. Not to mention the fact that China has been helping North Korea import natural resources, including coal.
The next question I have is regarding what can U.S.-based NGOs do to provide information to North Korea in a meaningful way? What are the kinds of ways that U.S.-based NGOs can help get information into North Korea?
세 번째 질문입니다. 현재 미국에 있는 비영리 단체들이 북한 주민들에게 정보를 전달할 때 효과적으로 할 수 있는 방법이 어떤 방법들이 있을까요?
그 콘텐츠는 이제 여러 가지가 있을 수 있는데요. 지금 그러니까 북한 주민들이 깨어날 수 있게끔 그들이 자유민주주의 체제가 어떤 것인지 우리가 북한이 왜 개혁 개방을 못하고 그렇게 억압된 체제에서 살고 있는지 이러한 그 콘텐츠들을 개발해서 이제 북한에 들여보내야 되고 그다음에 또 이제 최근에 그러니까 한국에 지금 정착하고 있는 탈북민들이 자유 북한 방송을 비롯해서 이제 여러 가지 이제 활동들을 하잖아요. 이제 그러니까 이런 목소리들을 전달해 주는 것이 북한 사람들한테는 굉장히 자극이 되고 그렇게 된다고 생각합니다.
In terms of what kind of contents we need to send into North Korea, there's a lot. For instance, we can help North Koreans understand that what democracy is. And at the same time, we need to help them understand that why they cannot bring changes in North Korea. So I recommend that we could utilize the voices of North Korean defectors living in South Korea through Free North Korea Radio. So that way that people of North Korea understand that outside of North Korea is not a dangerous world.
I just want everyone to know that I didn't pay him to say that. Defense Forum Foundation is the main sponsor of Free North Korea Radio. Okay, I got another great question about communication. If Koreans living in places like Wonsan, Cheongjin, and Sinuiju can communicate by cell phone with each other within and between cities through transmission facilities not controlled by a dictatorship in Pyongyang, what is the likely progression of effect on the dictatorship? We know that people, here we can talk a little bit about the communication ability. We know that people near the border can get out, can reach people outside. So if you could comment about that.
다음 질문입니다. 이제 북한 주민들 중에 특히 원산, 청진, 신의주 지역 쪽에서 이제 살고 계시는 분들이 계시는데 그분들이 핸드폰을 통해서 서로 그 김정은 정권의 감시 없이 서로 대화를 하면서 핸드폰을 통해서 대화를 할 수 있나요? 또한 이것과 관련해서 이 김정은 독재 정권이 어떠한 영향을 받을까요?
그 북한 그 주민들이 가지고 있는 핸드폰이 이제 북한 당국의 감시를 받지 않고 통화할 수는 없을 거예요. 이제 그 전에 그 오라스콤이 처음에 이제 북한의 그 전화를 보고할 때는 이제 그런 감시 체계 시스템, 이제 도청 시스템을 함께 들어왔거든요. 이제 이런 게 북한은 이제 원래 감시 통제하는 나라이기 때문에 모든 사람들의 통제를 받는다고 생각하고, 그럼에도 불구하고 사람들은 이제 자기 자유를 할 거라고 생각합니다. 예민한 얘기는 못 하겠죠 거기서.
So the bottom line is people cannot have conversations without having any types of surveillance on their conversations. Because the very first time when the regime introduced cell phones to the people of North Korea, they also developed this kind of system to surveillance people's conversations, especially on their cell. With that being said, I believe that currently the people of North Korea cannot just express their thoughts and ideas freely over the phone conversations.
I have another question. Please tell us the role that Japan can play for the transformation of North Korea regime. This is from an NGO leader. What role Japan could play for the transformation of North Korea?
다음 질문입니다. 북한 정권이 이제 민주주의와 자유화를 향해서 이제 변화를 해서 나아갈 때 일본은 과연 어떠한 역할을 할 수 있을까요?
저는 뭐 일본도 이제 그 주변 나라니까 이제 북한이 이제 뭐 개혁 개방을 하고 그다음에 또 이제 민주화를 향해서 나간다면은 일본도 북한의 이제 그 경제 개발과 관련된 협조를 한다고 생각하고 있습니다. 아마 그 사람들도 오래전부터 그런 구상을 하고 있는 걸로 알고 있습니다.
Well, obviously, Japan is a neighboring country of North Korea. If one day North Korea decides to transform and bring freedom and democracy into North Korea, I believe that Japan can help North Korea mainly economically through economic cooperation, economic agreements, and things like that.
Okay, we have time for one more question. This is a really important one about what South Korea is doing. The current policies of the Moon administration, I know Mr. Rhee mentioned some of that earlier, but what is his feeling about the policies of the Moon administration? Are they helping to bring about human rights and freedom for North Korea, or are they making the situation worse, the policies of the current government in South Korea?
현 대한민국 문재인 정권에 대한 질문입니다. 현재 문재인 정권의 이런 북한에 대한 정책들이 인권을 개선하고 북한의 상황을 개선하는 데 도움이 된다고 보시는지, 만약 그렇게 보신다면 왜 그렇게 보시는지, 아니면 아니라면 왜 아닌지 설명해 주시길 바랍니다.
저는 현재 그 한국의 문재인 정부가 과거에 인권 활동도 진행한 사람들이 많고요. 또 한국의 군부 독재를 반대해서 싸우던 사람들도 많이 이제 기득권 세력이 됐다고 봅니다. 그런데 그들은 북한의 장기 집권 독재에 대해서는 한마디 얘기도 하지 않고 또 북한의 인권에 대해서도 그들은 한마디 얘기를 하지 않고 있습니다.
I understand that within the Moon administration, they have a lot of human rights activists, but ironically, they never mention neither family dictatorship in North Korea nor human rights abuses happening in North Korea.
그래서 그 사람들은 우리가 볼 때는 이제 아주 위선적이지 않나 이렇게 생각합니다. 자기 그 나라에서 자기들이 젊었을 때는 독재를 반대해서 싸웠는데 북한의 독재는 독재가 아니라고 지금 그렇게 얘기를 하고 있는 것 봐서는 아주 위선적이라고 생각합니다.
So I think that the current officials within the Moon administration are a bunch of hypocrites. In the old days, they fought for their freedom, but now they're telling the people of North Korea that whatever is happening in North Korea is not a dictatorship.
그러니까 지금 문재인 정부는 북한의 그 사람들 50년 동안 정치범 수용소가 운영되고 있고 거기에서 고통받는 수십만 명의 사람들이 있다는 것을 알고 있고 또 북한 주민들이 독재자에 의해 마구 처형당하고 축청당하는 이런 현상을 보면서도 북한 정권에 대해서 안고 있습니다.
Furthermore, the Moon administration understands well that North Korea has been maintaining political prison camps for about 50 years, and they had executed, and they are still executing numerous people inside North Korea. But again, they never talk about it. They, being Moon administration, never mentions that fact.
그러니까 이게 북한의 인권 문제를 논의하지 않고 북한의 독재에 대해서 얘기를 하지 않으면 앞으로 이제 북한 주민들과 한국 정부와의 교감이 제대로 되지 않을 거라고 저는 생각합니다.
So if you never mention human rights violations or dictatorship in North Korea, it might be really difficult for the South Korean government to communicate with the people of North Korea.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Jong Ho, for answering the question, what to do about North Korea. I want to thank everybody who has joined us for the session today. I especially want to acknowledge Jason West, the person working behind the scenes that made this program possible. We had a lot of challenges. Those of us who work on human rights for North Korea are under a lot of cyber attack. And so we have to create a secure platform to be able to do this program. And so I really want to especially recognize Jason West for helping us do this and create the platform for us to make this possible. And I also want to acknowledge Johnny Park and Hyun Lee for their help with the translation. And of course, it's been wonderful to hear from Mr. Jong Ho. We wish you much success and good health in all the work that you're doing and speaking out on these issues. And again, I want to thank everyone who's joined us today and acknowledge also the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Laura Crouch and Annie Kowalski for helping us reach out to folks on the Hill to be here. Again, thank you so much for being with us. And Apogee, are you